Hello and welcome to the Brand Retro Podcast. Today I want to have a little conversation and get to know Hazel Imogen. Did I say that correctly?
You said it correct.
Well, Hazel, welcome to the podcast and thanks for coming on. Kick us off a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and we'll kind of take it from there. I will say I do have some questions ready for you because I was doing my homework before we recorded here, and you've got a very fun vibe on your website I liked.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, for having me. I'm super excited to be on. A little bit about what I do. I am a branding and creative director. I just started freelancing full-time this year. I've always done it kind of in the background. I've worked at a lot of different agencies. Before I even graduated college, I was working in agencies. So I've had a huge agency background, small to big agencies, working in marketing, advertising, branding. I did some illustration in there and kind of found that branding was really what I loved to do. So the last agency I was at, I really honed in on that, took branding as like my specialty and kind of ran with that. And then when I was let go at the beginning of this year, I was like kind of looking around for jobs and everyone was encouraging me like, just start your own thing now. Like, this is it. Like, this is your time. And I was a little hesitant to do that just because, I love the creative side of everything. But when it comes to business, I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, it's just not where my mind was at. But I ended up, talking to the right people. My brother's really smart with that stuff and he kind of helped me out. So it's just happened that I've kept getting clients as a freelancer. So I'm, just running with it now. And I'm in the process of starting my own studio. But again, like, it's just something that's taking some time to kind of roll out, but I'm super excited about it.
So how do you feel that transition has gone? I ask because, in the agency world, I think there's a formality to it. There's a way that agencies do things. And when you step out of that format and you kind of start your own thing, you don't necessarily have to follow that plan anymore. You can do more so what you want to do or even more what the client's asking you to do. So let's talk a little bit about that transition and the fact that, hey, congrats for making the leap. That's pretty cool. But kind of what that's been like.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it was terrifying. I was never expecting to get thrown into this how I did. When I got let go of the company, it was unexpected. So I was really not prepared to go freelance. And like I said, I was so scared. And that's why I kind of turned to looking back at agencies and, falling back into something that I knew I was good at and I knew I was comfortable with. So kind of transitioning into full-time freelance. Yeah, it was terrifying. But I think all of that agency experience has helped me in kind of my own processes. And like you said, you don't need to follow the same sort of rigorous kind of ins and outs of what you would do at an agency. I'm kind of doing things on my own terms now. And a lot of that is through, what I really liked at working at agencies and what I didn't like working at agencies. And I kind of picked out of the things I loved about it. And that's really like helped me with my own business and my own growth. I only work with clients that I actually believe are doing really good in the world. And like, they're super passionate about what they want to do. It's not really about like the money or like, I have to work on this client because my boss is telling me. Like, now I can kind of choose that. And I have really strict boundaries for myself with freelancing now, which is something that, again, I learned the hard way through agencies. Like, you need to put up those boundaries. And now that I'm doing that on my own, it's great. It definitely took some time. It wasn't like right when I started doing freelance, everything was set up perfect. It took some time. Like the first few months I was, living out of my savings account, and then things started to slowly pick up speed, and I kind of got my footing. Clients were trickling in, and now I've got more clients that I've got freelancers that I'm working with to help me on my stuff. So it's trusting the process, really just knowing that when things are down, like you just got to keep working at it and moving forward through it to get to that better side of things.
Yeah. Not to make this entrepreneurial coaching call, but it's important that when you start doing your own thing, and there's a balancing act there, right? Because there's always going to be those jobs that you have to, okay, I'm going to do this one because I got to pay the rent or whatever it is.
Right.
There's always a percentage of those, but by and large, work with the people you want to work with and work on the projects you want to work on, because those are the projects that are going to shine. And when those projects shine, it creates noise, it creates referrals, it creates more work. So it's super important that you know, at least half, if not 80% of the time, that you're chasing and securing the projects that make you look good and make you successful, because it just breeds more work. And you mentioned it, you know, kind of the fear of taking the leap and kind of what that looks like. You know, when you're in this industry, and especially when you're your own company, your own agency, you know, you just get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's just part of the process.
It's so true. Comfortable being uncomfortable. It's like weekly, there's something you're uncomfortable about. And if you're not, then something's not going right. You're like, I need to be uncomfortable about something.
Yeah. But what you'll find is when you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, the more comfortable you become, your confidence kind of starts to raise as well. So being uncomfortable isn't as scary anymore, because there's always something. There's always, I don't know what it is, but something's going to pop up tomorrow, the day after that. There's always going to be another hurdle. And it's just about, you know, whether or not you have the confidence and the experience to, you know, to manage it. And I think what you're doing right now, and kind of how we ended up on a podcast together, is it's the right step, because you surround yourself with people that will support you and help you answer those questions. And if you're lucky, you'll find somebody like me that's made a lot of mistakes, because I'll be more than happy to tell you about all my mistakes, and then you don't have to go through them yourself. So
no, you're so right, Mike. Like, surrounding yourself with people who are there to, you know, support you is so important during that time, and that kind of a transition when you start to work for yourself. I've found, like, all my friends, all my family have introduced me to someone, whether that be clients or like business support or just connections, or, you know, things about the business I would never know about, or even on the creative aspects of things, like hooking me up with different partnerships. And having that kind of community is so important for your success.
Yeah. And again, not to make this a business.
No, we're going down there.
But, you know, focus on your partnerships. You'll hear this on my podcast. You'll hear it from me 1,000 times as we get to know each other. But for me, it's all about the relationship. And I mean that from a client perspective, a partner relationship, whatever it is. There's really not a project or a price tag that gets in front of that for me. And it takes time, but it eventually solves that problem for you, and the fact that you don't have to be so price driven, because if you've got the right people around you and you've got the partnerships and the relationships built, it figures itself out. And that's, you know, in what we're doing, you know, like I said, you get the confidence and you get the get comfortable with being uncomfortable. All of that starts to work together, and all of a sudden, I don't want to say it's easy, but it becomes a lot more manageable than it did on that first day. Because that first day,
totally,
that's the scariest day.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
So let's transition a little bit and talk about branding. As you probably know, branding's kind of my jam. It's something that I think is, if not the most important element of any business, it's right up there. I think for somebody to build and construct their brand in a way that not only they fall in love with it, but it forces their followers, their clients, their brand lovers to fall in love with it, is uber important. So let's talk a little bit about that, and what's your philosophy on that, and what's your experience with it? You know, tell me about a few victories that, you know, we can kind of play off of.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you're saying. I think it's all about that connection. And for me, I feel like I'm the bridge for the people who have got these businesses and their clients or their followers or their members or whatever that may be. And I'm just that tool to get that passionate, like, idea or product to the right people to make those meaningful connections. And it is all about those connections. And it's through visuals, it's through storytelling, it's through the whole user experience, every touch point along the way, which is I don't know. The best part about branding is thinking about every single touch point. It's from, the moment they discover the brand to the moment that they've had that brand or they've had that product or whatever it may be for years, and they're advocating to their friends about it. And I think that's kind of the cool crossover too between like branding and marketing, is like they're so intertwined, and having that solid brand work so well with marketing is going to really help influence those connections and make sure customers or members or however your business is structured is, functioning so well.
Yeah, it really enhances everything is what it does. So the more
Yep.
the more dialed in you can be with the brand elements and the authenticity of kind of what makes it the brand, it only enhances all the tactical pieces, whether it be Google ads, graphic design, websites, whatever it is, it only enhances it. So like, and I'm just going to throw this blanket compliment at you because I can tell that you're this person, but whether you're an existing brand, you're somebody who's starting from scratch, why you want to find a person like Hazel or myself or somebody is that we are, kind of the identifiers of what those elements are, but we're also the person who's going to translate it for you. I'll let you respond to that, but a lot of times when we're in those discussions, you're seeing it kind of unravel, and you're seeing those elements kind of float to the top, but the client, the person giving you that information doesn't even see it. So what we do is we sit back, we listen, we collect, we capture, and then we take all those pieces that we extracted from those conversations and we say, well, here's your brand. This is what it is. It's kind of at that point obvious to us because they've given us all the answers, but they didn't know they were the answers.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even put that on, these businesses, because that's just not in their wheelhouse all the time.
Right.
Like they shouldn't be expected to know how to brand their own business, because what they're good at is whatever their business is. So it takes a professional, like, a brand creative director or something like that to come in and really be able to articulate and, like you said, translate it to the outside world. So we're not inventing really anything new. We're just translating what they already have and putting it out there and being that one to tell the story to their audience to make sure they're understanding what it is that's so magical about what they're doing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't really expect them, or even, at this point, I don't even have the false hope that they can do it. I just, I just know that when they come to us, our job is to sift through and filter through what they're telling us to try to find those nuggets. And once those nuggets of information appear, I don't want to say it makes our job easy, but it makes our job possible, because a lot of times as graphic artists, as creators, we get thrown this credit of, I don't know where you guys get this from. And the answer is like, well, we get it from you. We just and do something with it. So let's transition just from that process to kind of making it palatable. Now you got to do something with it. So you're also a designer, you're an illustrator, you've got those chops, to kind of take that concept and do something with it. Tell me a little bit about your process and kind of how you capture those details and kind of make it come to life.
Yeah. So when I like to think of processes, I try and make them really loose, because I think having too strict of a process kind of confines you into, staying on this very linear path. And I don't think creativity is very linear. So I like to try and believe I have a non-process process. But with that being said, there are steps that have to be taken. We always start out with some sort of discovery calling. And like you said, that's kind of where we get those nuggets of information. We hear from our clients, like what it is that drives them, where their goals are, like how they got these ideas, all these kinds of things. And that's like a huge conversation. Without that conversation, you wouldn't be able to do the rest of the branding. And then from there, my process, I love to work with brand archetypes. So we kind of sift through those. It's a little bit of a conversation with the client. I talk to them about what the different ones are. We kind of fit them up to what the personality of the brand is. And once we've got that nailed in, And sometimes it's not one, sometimes we mix a couple, or we're like, we could be a hero brand, or we could be a joker brand. And we kind of showed two different directions based off of those archetypes. And with the archetypes, we also do character words for the brand. We are not statements, kind of to hone in on those brand words. We do the whole logo suite, and I think that's something that, not a lot of designers do logo suites. They like to have like one or two lockups. I love to do like a whole logo suite because I think they can be, used interchangeably depending on the export of what we want that to be put on. And then we do some mock-ups, we do visuals, we do type treatment, color palettes, all the very generic things. And this will come after we do like a research presentation back to them where we look at kind of the competitive landscape, holes in the landscape where we think that they could really find their niche spot. And this is like an entirely long process. Me speaking this back to you sounds like it's really quick, but it does take some time to really nail in. And once we've nailed that in, most of the time my clients will sign on for just, that initial branding up front. And once we've gone through all that, we end up going through launch strategies or marketing strategies, depending on where they are in their business, timeline. Because it's not always right at the beginning of them starting out this cool idea. Sometimes they've been around and they're like, this isn't working anymore. We need to, rebrand, refresh or something just to get us in a new direction, or they want to change their target audience. So that's what I mean when I say it's not really super linear. We always kind of flex and have to shift things around to make sure we're meeting the needs. And that's another huge important thing, right? Like finding out what is the goal of this brand. Is it that you want to start selling a new product? Is it that you want to show up globally instead of locally? Like we always try and figure that out. And that kind of drives everything else through the branding as we're figuring it out.
Yep. I'll let you respond to this, but one of the things I just want to mention this for the sake of the listener out there, because a lot of times clients are looking for that process, right? They want to know how to get from, A to G or whatever it is. And they think it's progressional that you go A, B, C, D, E, F, G or whatever it is. And it's just not. The reality is that every client's different. Depending on where they're at in the process, if they've already started, if they're existing, if they're new, if they already took a whack at it and failed, like it just depends on where they're at in the process that then dictates, if there is a process, where in that process we even start, or if we skip steps, or if we have to back the truck up and start somewhere else. But it's a little different with every client. And a lot of times I find myself in the position of having to explain this to clients because logically, like I said, they want this progressional explanation or this, 5-step process or whatever it is. And the reality is it just doesn't work that way, especially when we're doing something that is highly creative, highly custom. And a lot of times it's completely based on them. So whether they understand it or not, it's kind of dictated by all those different things, where they're at in the process and what they're bringing to the table. So why I mention that is because, anybody listening to this podcast, I want them to understand that like your answer is, in my opinion, spot on, because that's the reality of it. And there's no reason to sugarcoat it. And there's no reason to lead customers to believe that it's easier than that, because it's not.
No, and if it was, I don't think the process would be as fun. It would feel so robotic. And I think what makes branding so cool is that it's like very personal. And I get so close with my clients because I have so many conversations and I want to know everything about it. And if it was so structural and templated, I don't think it would allow for that opportunity to get close to your clients. And I don't know, maybe I'm too personal with them, but like I'll text them and be like, hey, like, what do you think about this? Or like, random question to get to know their brand. Like, if your brand was a shoe, would you be this? And they'll be like, what the heck? Why am I getting these texts? So I think it's really important.
No, I think you're spot on in that's how you create something unique. And that's how you put separation between like the client's brand and their competitors. That's, it's something we get asked, right? We get asked, how are you going to distinguish my brand from somebody else's? And it's like they want you to invent the distinction. And it's like, well, if you do your part, give me the information I need, the distinction will just manifest out of nowhere because it already exists. We just have to capture it and identify it. Let's talk a little bit about what that landscape looks like for you. You said you started this year, right?
Yeah. Started full-time freelancing this year. I've always kind of done it in the background. But it's been small stuff, and now I'm like working with some bigger clients on my own and having long time engagements with my clients on retainer models and like learning so much about running a studio. Yeah.
So have you identified any kind of a niche or an industry or anything that you're, kind of seeking to go after, or where are you at in that process?
Yeah, so I have a love-hate with the whole niche thing. I know like some people are like super gung-ho about it, and I'm all about it. If you're about it, I'm about it for you. But for me, I don't think I fall into a specific niche as far as like a type of business. For me, it's about the people. All of my clients, if I like got them together in one room for a party, they'd all get along because they're all the same like energy. They're the same kind of like go-getter mentality. They're all pretty badass. They all like to drink beers and, whiskey and coffee. And like, I just feel like we vibe. And if me and my client vibe, I know we're going to make some good shit together. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that on here. We're going to make some good stuff together. And, that's kind of, I guess my niche is kind of like the people. It's small to mid-sized business owners who are, badass go-getters.
Yeah. And don't take this wrong. That was not a trick question by any means, but it was a question in that I was curious to see what your thoughts were on it, because I'm of the same mindset. I think we find ourselves through referrals or through, just customer relationships. I think we find ourselves working on a series of certain kinds of projects, clients, brands, whatever it is within a certain industry. But as far as like a self-identified niche or maybe an industry that we go after, I mean, we just don't, because the process of creating the brands, building the relationship, it all stems back to the people, like you said. So the process of how we get there is kind of, it spans across all industries. It really doesn't matter to me. It's more about the people. And it's something that it's funny because I think 9 out of 10 agencies, 9 out of 10 business coaches, 9 out of 10, they want to know, like, they want you to answer that question as to what industry is your niche. And it's like, they all are. I mean, the way I do it, they all are. And again, we've found the pattern where we've spent more time in one than another. But at the end of the day, I mean, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know about you, but for me, if I was doing like one industry, I would get so bored and like feel like I was just doing the same thing. Or I'm like, how do I like make this different from the last same business I did that was similar? And I'm like, I don't want to kind of be reinventing the wheel for the same industry every time. And I love in my day that I'm working on like something like I have a recovery club business that I'm working on, and it's all about like recovery health and stuff like that. And then I switch gears to a Thai chili jam packaging project. And then later on in the day, I'm like doing some wine packaging, like it's kind of just all over the place. And I love that switch up, and it keeps my brain stimulated because I love trying so many different styles, and I love experimenting with so many different design techniques that it allows me to have more of a playground.
Yep. And I'm going to throw this out there for the listeners again, because and no offense to somebody who has a niche. If you've got a niche and you're happy with it, go nuts. I don't care.
100%.
You do you. I think that's great. But when I'm looking for creative inspiration, or if I'm somebody who's looking for an outside source of talent, I'm always more impressed with somebody who can translate those talents across multiple industries, multiple niches, whatever it is, because then you know that they're flexible, that they're able to adjust, they're problem solvers. And not that somebody who has a niche isn't, but like you said, I don't think the challenge is as high, if you're living in one space. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think that somebody who's able to bounce across industries and kind of maintain a certain level of work or certain expectation. I'm more impressed with that. And I think that's a unique talent that not everybody has.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. Like the people who do niche down absolutely no hate. I think it's super admirable that you can do that. I think saying that everybody should do that though is just not like great a great business model, because it just doesn't work for everyone. We're not all going to function the same way as creatives, and that's the beauty of being a creative. We get to kind of pick what we want to do, and it's kind of why a lot of people go down that industry, or become a creative as a profession. So like to then take that away from them, that option, like it just doesn't work for everybody.
Right. So what's the one service that you lead with? What's the, like, if you were to kind of say, this is kind of my mission statement, my creative stance on marketing, what is that for you?
I would say I get most of my clients coming to me for branding, full overhaul branding. And then, from there, it almost always turns into a longer term engagement, because we've built those relationships, and we've made them this beautiful brand, and they know how to use it, but they trust now the process of having a creative expert to have them run through a year or 6 months of like pushing that out into the world. And that kind of opens up so many different doors. So I help with like websites, I help with email marketing, I help with print and packaging and promotions and events, and again, that's part of that, changing everything up. And like all my clients are at different parts in the process, so I'm working on like a million different things, and like changing gears of what I'm actually physically working on throughout the day so many times that it's just so exciting.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm saying this because I think it jives very closely with my own belief on it, but I don't view the branding side of it as a strategy to get my door open or get my fingers in those other areas. It's just, branding is where I'm most comfortable, and I have enough belief in branding and how important it is that I lead with that, because to me, it's the part of every conversation. But then what happens from that, to your point, is that it all connects. So all of a sudden, it's like you started with a logo and it turned into a brand style guide, and now it's a website, and then it turned into social media, and now it's package design, and now it's graphic design. And it just starts to snowball into more work and more brand creation. And it just kind of feeds that creative side of us who, we set out to create the brand, and now we're doing it across multiple platforms, across all different mediums, and it really kind of feeds, selfishly, it feeds that creative side to us. But from a strategic standpoint, it also keeps the business rolling forward. It keeps the client happy. It keeps everybody kind of on the same page. And why I mention that again is because not everybody does it that way, and I think it's unique. And I think, if you're a graphic artist or somebody listening to this that's like, well, that's a mad strategy, I'm going to take that. Do that. If it works for you, do that. But how we got there, and I think what I'm hearing from you, is that it just naturally kind of turned into that, which it's authentically just feeding you and feeding your brand in a way that works.
Yeah. And the other thing with that is when people come in and like ask for things and their branding's already done, they don't want to work on that branding. And sometimes it's just because they don't know they need to work on their branding, or that maybe they just recently got it done and then they come for other services. If I don't agree with their branding or how they've positioned themselves, or it's not done correctly, the rest of their marketing may not be successful. And I don't want that to come back on me as a bad marketer, because it might not be the marketing fault. It might be the fact that the branding wasn't ever done correctly to set you up for success in marketing. And that's another reason why, if a client comes in and they don't want branding services, which seems like the same with you, that's kind of like the funnel to get you in, that sometimes can be problematic. But if we look at it and we're like, hey, your branding's in a great spot, I understand it, you've got good brand guidelines, then I will work with them on, campaigns and stuff like that, because I know they're serious about what they're doing and they got professional help for the branding as well. So in those cases, I think that there are exceptions where I will definitely come in and help out and still work on the brand.
Yeah. And I think tell me if this is what you're saying, but in those situations, like I'm always evaluating whether or not I can make a positive impact. I work well within teams and I work well with other creatives. In fact, I enjoy working with other creatives. But sometimes if there's too many companies involved, too many cooks in the kitchen, however you want to say it, it does change the outcome. It changes the ability to succeed. And it's not that I don't want to help, but it's like, I don't want to make it any worse than it is. You've already got 3 people working on it, or, whatever it is. There has to be some level, or the lesson I should say for the client is there has to be some level of brand control there. And with too many people, too many opinions, it can make it worse for you. So it's important, not that it has to be just me or just Hazel or whatever, but having the right people on the, the right people on the right seat on the bus is important.
Yeah. For me, I just think like branding is your foundation. And once you've got that foundation down, you can build whatever you want off of it.
Yeah. You actually mentioned this earlier, but brands are meant to expand and contract. And when you're creating, a lot of times I think brand is believed to be black and white, and the brand style guide is supposed to be a rule book that's meant to be followed. And I think people look at it as a lot more of a finite thing, and it's not. The brands are meant to expand and contract, and the brand style guide is a guide. Keyword is guide. It's meant to evolve. It's meant to change. And if you need brand logo mock-ups from different mascots to different word treatments, different fonts, if you can organize it, keep it straight, keep it consistent, there is no end to what you can do from a branding perspective, but you have to maintain it. That's the goal.
100%.
Yeah. So Hazel, thank you for coming on. I enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks so much for having me on.
If you'd like to learn more about the CyberDogs experience, check us out online at cyberdogsmarketing.com for updated blogs, new podcast episodes, examples of previous work, and the brands we have and are currently working with, and much, much more.